The agenda this week considered the consequences of women leaving the tech sector. We learned about the limits of leadership and parsed the place the niqab has in Canadian democracy. The agendas we can review now begins with fixing primary care in Ontario.
I think the first thing I want to say, Steve, is that it's less important how doctors get paid and more important what kind of care their patients get. I don't think too many patients care what payment model their doctor is. They care if they can get to see their doctor and they get good quality care. And one of the things that all of these models have done is they've taken us from a time, just over 10 years ago, maybe 15, when family medicine almost disappeared in this province. I think if we hadn't created these models, we wouldn't have family medicine in Ontario.
Why not?
At that time, there were over 3 million patients who didn't have a family doctor. We couldn't get medical schools to apply to become family doctors. Less than 10% of medical students at that time were applying to family medicine programs.
But these incentives worked to help create more family doctors. We've completely reformed the system, and now almost 50% of medical students want to become family doctors. We are attracting doctors to come and practice in Ontario, and we have made a big improvement. We now have only 900,000, that's still a lot, patients that don't have a family doctor. But that's why we're really concerned that the government is actually dismantling these changes that we have worked so hard together to create, and we're worried they're going to take us back 10 years to a time when we're already hearing from medical students today that many who were considering family medicine are reconsidering that and going to do something else. And then, after all of this, there is you.
There's me.
And you are a relatively new, as these things go, entrant in the healthcare system as well. I mean, 20 years or so, right?
Well, it's actually since the early 70s, really, so not that new. We've actually been around for quite a while as nurse practitioners.
Tell us how you see your role in the increasingly complicated healthcare system.
So as a nurse practitioner, I work as part of the teams that we've just been discussing to provide a whole range of services. So in the course of my day, I would be seeing patients for a variety of reasons, whether that's for
tell us about it. You've got a practice in Pickering.
I do, yes.
Who's in your family health team?
So in my family health team, we have, I believe, 12 family physicians, two and a half nurse practitioners, we have a dietitian, we have 2 social workers, we have a pharmacist, and we have 5 registered nurses. And we all work to provide whatever services patients need, whether that's individual services as individual appointments, whether that's group sessions and teaching. We provide a variety of care, a lot of mental health counseling, a lot of group sessions. I do a lot of work around smoking cessation and do a lot of wellness care as well.
Can you just walk in off the street and go to your...
You can't. So in part of the family health teams, you do have to be a patient of the team. So generally you have to be rostered to one of the physicians who is part of the team. And
if, this is one of the things you hear all the time, I'm sick, I call the doctor, they say, come in 10 days. They're busy. Yeah. How long a wait in your case, if somebody's sick, before they get to come in and see somebody on the team?
In most cases, most people would probably be able to get an appointment the same day or the next day if needed. I think one of the benefits of the family health teams that we've seen is that real increase in access to care. So most patients would be able to get in at least, if not the same day, then the next day.
Now, don't take this the wrong way, but if a patient calls and says, I'm feeling sick, I want to come in and see a doctor, and they get in the front door and instead they see you, perfectly qualified nurse practitioner, but not a doctor, how do they react to that?
I have never had anyone personally who's had an issue. Honestly, most people are simply so grateful. They just want to see someone who can help them. They don't really care what my title is. They don't really care what my scope of practice is. They just want to know that someone can help them.
Do you have your own kind of roster or list of patients?
I do have patients for whom I'm the primary provider. So, they had mentioned that a number of years ago we had many patients in the province who had no access to a family physician. So we now have patients who have access to a family physician or a nurse practitioner, as the case may be through the nurse practitioner-led clinics. So yes, I do have my own patients for whom I am the primary provider, and most of the, I think, nurse practitioners and family health teams would be the primary provider. If we need someone else on the team, including the family physician, to help manage that patient, then we have access to that team member. That's the benefit of being in the team.
I'm going to stir up a little mischief here between you two, because that's what I do. Because there was a time, once upon a time, in the province, well, everywhere, where basically the doctor was it. And we didn't have nurse practice, we didn't have all of these other people who were part of the family health team. You're encroaching on some of what was traditionally considered his turf, if I can put it that way. And I wonder what the majority of doctors in this province think of that.
I think doctors in this province know that in 2015, the best care comes from teams of caregivers working together, everybody doing their part, using their skill set to provide care to patients together. and our profession supports that completely.
Completely?
Our profession supports those concepts
completely. But even if it costs you in the pocketbook, which surely it does.
Our healthcare system is changing and evolving, and doctors understand that it's changing and evolving, and then we work together in teams. And as I said before, patients don't care how their doctor is paid, and I think that we don't need to be talking about what doctors enjoy out of these various team models. I think it's what the patients get out of them. Mm-hmm. And they can come into a family health team, and they can see the doctor about their complex diabetic medical issues, and then they can go and see a dietitian who can help them manage their diet to help manage their diabetes, and then they can go see Claudia, who can help them manage their blood sugars and their insulin levels and all of those things. And they can do all that on the same day. Mm-hmm. And in the models that we had before with a solo doctor, you just simply didn't get those services. And so patients benefit from that.
Okay. With this background in place now, we've taken some time to get the background in place. The Ministry of Health has pushed the pause button, and they have said there's a limit on how many doctors can join these family health teams. Why have they hit the pause button, in your view?
Well, these teams are more expensive in the upfront, and that's the big issue. Governments tend to look on 4-year cycles for obvious reasons, and I think that
they're called elections.
We need to take a longer-term view. Patients in family health teams get fantastic care. Particularly patients who have chronic diseases, and as you know, our population is getting older on average, and we get more chronic disease as people get older. And those patients, when they get good care up front, somebody with diabetes, for instance, we manage their diabetes well, they don't have all the complications down the road that cost a lot to the healthcare system, that require them to get admitted to hospital and have surgical procedures. And so that care is really important. And yes, it costs more up front to have a whole team to provide that care. But it also allows patients to get after-hours care, as Rick was saying earlier, so that they don't have to go to the emergency department. They can see their family doctor in the evening or somebody from that team. And those things are critical.
Let me go over here. What's your view on the pushing of the pause button that the province has done on more doctors joining family health teams?
Well, I think that one of the things that was said earlier is that there's also an issue of redistribution. I think that this government is really looking at the needs of the people and the needs of the community and starting to figure out what is the best model to meet those needs.
You really believe that?
I absolutely believe that.
As opposed to, $12.5 billion deficit, we got to save money wherever we can?
No, absolutely that as well, but how are you going to change the dynamic? We need to change the conversation. And the change of the conversation, we hear this government talk about people-centered care. I've got a study here that in 1972 was talking about people-centered care.
1972,
they were talking about people-centered care, and that was a report done by Dr. Hastings. It was published in the Canadian Medical Association, and it called for a national network of community health centers across the province, across the country, with interprofessional teams. The irony always is that I find it, when the family health teams came to Ontario, it was like the family health teams created teams, whereas the community health centers have been in the province of Ontario for over 45 years. Working in teams with people working to full scope and doctors on salary. So when I hear these things about incentives, where you have the ability as government to look at a budget issue, you can look at the community health centers, and Rick can speak to the results. We're showing that we're seeing more complex clients than any of the other models, and we're showing good health outcomes.
The Conservative government did not wait long to appeal a federal court decision overturning a ban on women wearing niqabs during citizenship oath ceremonies. Prime Minister Harper explained his decision to try to reinstate the ban thus, quote, "I believe, and I think most Canadians believe, that it is offensive that someone would hide their identity at the very moment where they are committing to join the Canadian family. This is a society that is transparent, open, and where people are equal," close quote. Our next guest does not agree with the PM. We welcome back to TVO Clifford Orwin, Professor of Political Science at the University of Toronto, and it's good to see you again.
Good to be back.
I want to remind people that you wrote an op-ed for the Globe and Mail just a week ago, which was very cleverly headlined, "Stephen Harper's Veiled Attack on Religious Freedom." Did you write the headline?
No.
Very clever headline writer. What's your concern about what the PM's doing here?
Well, I'm not surprised at it because the government issued its policy in 2011, so it's only to be expected that they're sticking by it. But I feel that that policy is mistaken, and it was a mistake for them to issue it. It seems to me that they could have handled this whole question in a way that would have made aspiring Canadian citizens like Yanira Ishaq poster girls for Canadian tolerance. But they've handled it absolutely the opposite way. And the result is that they, I think, come off looking intolerant by any reasonable liberal standard of religious tolerance.
You got 500 responses to your piece on the Globe website, which is that's a lot of traffic. And we're going to put some of them up here, and we'll get you to comment on them. For example, here's the first one here. Sheldon, if you would, let's put this up. Canada finally has a leader who is not afraid to stand for Canadian values. What's wrong with openness and transparency? I like those values. I like to see people's faces. I grew up that way. I don't ask much of people. Openness and transparency. Thank you, Mr. Harper. Stay the course. How would you respond to Jack, who wrote that?
Well, I too respect Mr. Harper for being a strong defender of Canadian values, but I think here that he's simply got it wrong, because religious toleration, religious liberty is a Canadian value, freedom of worship is a Canadian value. These are liberal democratic values, especially nurtured by the Anglo-Saxon democracies. They go back a long way. You think of FDR's four freedoms, the second of which is freedom of worship. And you look at Canada's own Charter of Rights, or the very first right that's enumerated is in fact religious freedom. So that's the issue here, so far as I'm concerned. It's a core Canadian value that's issue here, the principle, I'm going to call it, of religious liberty. And I think that the Tory government has it all wrong.
Let's go to another one. Here's somebody else opining on the Globe website. He says, I oppose the burqa and niqab, just as I think it's wrong for Western women to wear shorts, tank tops, or short skirts when traveling in predominantly Muslim countries. When in another country, you respect the local customs, not ask them to adapt to yours. So is this kind of a when in Rome situation?
No, it's not. It's not a question of local custom. It may be that this respondent disapproves of the burqa and the niqab. That's his or her privilege, but that's not the issue here. The issue here is the right of a woman to wear the niqab. And it seems to me that that right is squarely protected by this principle of religious liberty.
Let's do what is admittedly a rather absurd example here, but again, tell me where you stand on this. If somebody shows up for a citizenship oath-swearing ceremony dressed in a Nazi stormtrooper uniform, and he says, these are my beliefs. I actually embrace the idea of a racial hierarchy. I am opposed to multiculturalism, and so I'm going to take the oath wearing this. So swear me in. Is that okay?
No, it's not. But nor is it a parallel circumstance, all right?
Okay.
Look, the niqab is it's an Islamic tradition. It's an Islamic tradition currently cultivated only by the most devout Muslims. Judge Boswell, who issued the ruling in the Yashak case, estimated that there were perhaps 100 other women in the outside in her situation. So we're talking about a very small group. It's a very conservative Muslim principle. But unless one is to take it that it is ipso facto intolerant or contrary to the principles of liberal democracy, but let's stay with intolerant, because again, the issue here is religious tolerance. The basic principles here of religious liberty from the very beginning, and I'm thinking back to Spinoza and Locke and the other great theorists of liberal democracy, is that we tolerate all religions that are themselves tolerant. Right? That's the fundamental liberal democratic principle.
So the Nazis are not tolerant, therefore we don't have to tolerate their intolerance.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. Intolerance is the very core, right, of the Nazi teaching. Intolerance of all, hateful intolerance of all kinds, much worse than intolerance, right?
What about Muslims who are rather intolerant of other Muslims or other religions? And if you wore the niqab, there's every possibility that's your view as well. I'm not saying it is, but it's possible.
It's possible, but that can't be presumed, right? It can't be presumed of Ms. Yashak that simply because she wears the niqab, right, she's practicing intolerance.
Here's John Ibbotson writing in the Globe and Mail. A woman who refuses to show her face in public, or the husband who forbids her to, is not Mr. Harper's kind of Canadian. And he believes most Canadians, including most immigrant Canadians, including most Muslim immigrant Canadians, are with him. What do you think?
I just have to stress again that the question is not whether Mr. Schock is my kind of Canadian or your kind of Canadian or anyone's kind of Canadian. The question is whether as Canadians we don't respect the principle of religious liberty, and therefore her right to act in the way that she deems acceptable to God or required by God, so long as her conduct does not violate the fundamental religious or other basic human rights of others. That's the principle.
What if it violates a vast majority of Canadians' sense of what's, bad word to use here, but let's just use it, kosher? What's appropriate? What feels right?
They're just going to have to suck it up.
The majority
yes.
are going to just have to suck it up.
Yes, that's right. Because, again, that's what religious toleration is all about. I mean, it's funny that you should use the term kosher, all right? Obviously, different religions have different notions of what's kosher.
I should have said halal.
Right, halal, right. The niqab is objectionable to the vast majority of Canadians. That's perfectly understandable. And in a way, we should be dismayed if it weren't, right? But nonetheless, the principle of religious liberty is absolutely central to Canadian liberal democracy, and the niqab does fall under its protection within its purview.
Inspiring the grid is the goal of Enterstore, a company whose focus is on energy storage. And joining us now to detail its work is Annette Verschuren, Chair and CEO of Enterstore, Inc. And we're happy to have you here in our studios. Thanks for coming in.
It's great to come by, Steve.
Well, let's just, we should put how you spell this up here, because it's the letter N,
yes,
the letter R, and then S-T-O-R.
Yes.
There it is. Okay. So Enterstore, what is it?
What is it? It's a company that we created about 2.5 years ago that really is focused on accelerating the commercialization of energy storage technology. And what we saw in terms of opportunity, and I always love opportunity in the energy business, there were a lot of energy storage technologies coming on, but they were all in prototypical stages, and we wanted to help commercialize them. So we set up Enterstore. And Enterstore is basically a company that develops the market, develops the project, builds a project, and constructs and operates the project. So we have our first energy storage project up and running in Ontario. It's a flywheel technology under Temporal Powers technology. And so
where is it?
We did that in Minto, in Harriston, just north of Cambridge.
Okay.
And so it's really quite exciting. It's the first one in Canada.
Some people will remember you used to be the head of Home Depot. How different is this life from the life you had as the CEO at Home Depot?
A bigger company. This is a smaller company. There were 8 of us that work around a table, maybe a little bit bigger than this table.
And how many employees at Home Depot?
There were 28,000 full and part-time people.
So this is quite smaller.
It's quite a bit smaller, but it's a lot of fun in that you do the same things. You develop a vision for your company. You bring the right people in, surround yourself with really smart people, and build out the development of your company and your organization. So we're into this 2.5 years, and so we'll continue to grow.
There may be an assumption that anybody who gets to where you got to on the corporate ladder had to be, educated at the finest private schools and grown up in the richest households, and I mean that's probably just an assumption that a lot of people have. In fact, you're from Sydney, Nova Scotia, and you grew up on a farm.
I did.
So that's not quite...
From North Sydney, Nova
North
Scotia.
Sydney, which is even less metropolitan than Sydney.
That's right.
So it's not quite the typical sort of went to Upper Canada College and made your way up the ladder.
Nope.
So it's kind of an amorphous question, but how'd you get from there to here? That's quite some distance.
It's been quite the journey. I was born and raised in Cape Breton and educated at St. Yves, got my business degree there, and my parents were Dutch farmers that came to Canada before we were born. And so my first job was on the farm, and after university, second job was in a coal mining company, and I did that for 9 years, and along the way, I had various jobs and, met people.
You didn't get the desire to be a corporate executive, though, from your farming parents, right? No. So where'd that come from?
Well, you know what? I loved making money. I remember as a kid cleaning out my uncle's chicken coop, and I made $10. It took about a week to do that, but those 10 $1 bills in my hand, recognizing the energy, work for reward, really excited me. And I knew that as a young child. I remember I said to my mother once, I want to be a president, and I didn't know what a president was, but I saw it on television or something. But I was always very entrepreneurial. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I think I was that from my very, very early days.
Serial entrepreneur meaning?
Yeah, I just loved finding solutions for problems. I was a fixer-upper. I could figure out how to get the cows milked faster. I could figure out, which cows are calving faster. I had always the ability to find the best way to fix something, or to get through something, or to get through work. And I always got a kick out of business. For me, it's always been a bit of a puzzle. How do you solve problems with great people? You surround yourself with a common problem, and how do you get productivity out of people to solve problems? So I started that at a very young age. A lot of responsibility as a kid. My father had a heart attack when I was 10, and so my brother and I, and the whole family, quite frankly, had to be, the workers on the farm.
He ran one of the biggest empires in the sporting world. The Maple Leafs, the Raptors, Toronto FC, the Marlies, the Air Canada Centre, BMO Field, Leafs TV, NBA TV. The list goes on. Now he has written all about it in a book not surprisingly called Dream Job. And we welcome the former CEO for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment Limited, Richard Petty, to TVO. Nice to have you here.
Nice being here. Thank you.
You are, I was surprised to learn in the book, not some kid who went to Upper Canada College and grew up on the right side of the tracks. You're from Windsor.
Yeah, barely got into school.
Always
university.
your dream job to run a basketball team.
Since I was 20, one day I had this crazy thought that I couldn't play worth a lick. I followed basketball, whether it was the University of Michigan or the University of Windsor. We had a very good team in those days, a men's team. Today we have a wonderful women's team. And so I wrote in a journal, I want to run a basketball team, which I didn't realize, I don't think in 1967 when I wrote it down, that there was only 12 NBA teams. So I wanted a job, there was 12 in the world. Pretty crazy.
Well, there's what, 30?
30 now.
30
Still
now.
Pretty crazy job.
30, and you got to do it.
I did.
You got to run the Toronto Raptors. Mm-hmm. Now, the day that Toronto got the Raptors, you actually were on the outs that day, right? You were part of the group that didn't get them.
Yes, Larry and Tannenbaum and I met, and he wanted to chase a franchise. I spent Saturdays when I was running Skydome writing up a brief to give to the NBA. Larry wrote him a big check for, get their attention, and we started the process. It was fair. Two groups came in, Slade and Bitov came in. That we went through the dance, and they won fair and square. And when I thought I was this close to realizing my dream, it was gone.
It was gone, but eventually you got it.
Yeah, there was a great article in the paper the next day where this fellow had lost out on a company. And he said, and I'll always remember this, they won, I lost next. So I started thinking of next, and that's when I ended up working for Gordon Craig and learning about Discovery Channel and TSN and launched tsn.ca. So when Alan Slate 3 years later needed a CEO, that's pretty qualified.
There you were. You ran the Skydome.
I did.
When it was called the Skydome.
When it was called. I still call it the Skydome.
Yeah,
I think I probably always will.
A lot of us do. What was the biggest challenge in running that facility?
I knew nothing about it. In 1989, I'd come out of consumer products, and that's how I interviewed too. When I was up against, one fellow I was up against was Michael Rowe, who was running Giants Stadium in the Meadowlands. And they said, why should we hire you? I said, not because I know anything about this, but I know all about marketing and sales and customer service and general management and finances from consumer products. And I don't know whether I got it for that reason, a fresh approach in '89, because the industry wasn't that sophisticated, or because there were three of us and I was the only Canadian, but I got the job.
When the Skydome was built, it was, I think, billed as one of the sort of 8 wonders of the world.
We called it the world's greatest entertainment center.
Where do you put it today on the Pantheon?
Oh, way down. It was the last really multiple-use facility. Shortly after that, Camden Yards opened, which is still to this day a wonderful baseball facility.
Baltimore.
And now, they're all basically single-purpose. Or if they're not single-purpose, they're pretty aligned. But you don't get multi-purpose. You don't do an ice show. You don't do football and that all, or concerts in the same building anymore.
When you eventually became the CEO of this massive sports empire that I described in the intro, could you please tell us what your job actually was?
Well, we had a strategy that a long-range strategy that we talked about every November, and I saw myself as 3 objectives. Win, on and off the playing field. On the playing field, clearly, not just win in the regular season, but to ultimately win championships, number 1. Number 2, to grow enterprise value. It was about $300 million of value when I took it over. It was $2 billion when I left. And third was to make an exceptional place to work, because if you've got engaged, motivated employees, they'll do a better job servicing and selling. So those were the 3 that kept me awake at nights.
How many employees did you have by the end?
We had about 700. We started off with about 125 and about 3,000 part-time.
And did you really know everybody's name?
No, I tried. The beauty is, if I went to a meeting, we had something called that intranet site, and everyone's picture was on it. So if I knew I'm meeting with 12 employees, I could look them up and then remember.
You want to tell us what your annual salary was?
What was my annual salary? It was $1.1 million plus bonuses.
And how did the bonuses turn out to be?
They were good in most of the years. They were better when I sold the company, because there was an incentive there to sell the company, and I retired 5 weeks before they sold the company.
Do I infer that if you were doing the same job in an American sports empire, you might have made 10 times that much?
Oh yeah, very much so. In fact, you just see it in CEOs. CEOs in the United States now are being paid about 280 times what the average employee makes, and I think what I was getting paid was like 40 times what my average employee was getting, which is the way it used to be, and the way it is closer to that in Canada. I really find the CEO salaries in the United States insane, excessive, awful.
Why hasn't the revolution begun yet? That's one of the things I often wonder.
Well, you know, this whole, this could go many ways. If you study history, when there gets to be this whole polarization between very wealthy and very poor, it does rise up ultimately. So it's scary. We have to address this. 1% controlling 80% of the wealth, it's not long-term viable.
They say that Silicon Valley is the place in North American business which is a true meritocracy. If you've got the brains, if you've got the goods, doesn't matter what you are, you'll rise to the top. Is that your experience?
I don't think anybody believes that that's true anymore, right? I think that that's a thing that was said in the early days, and there may have been, through some lenses, there may have been some truth to it. Like I think sometimes about things like Wikipedia, right? Jimmy Wales founded Wikipedia. He didn't have a huge amount of money. He didn't, get any special favors or whatever, and he was able to break through and make it really important, really popular and wonderful, right? So to the extent that that speaks to there having been a meritocracy or there being a meritocracy, sure, right? But I think that probably most people realize that a meritocracy is always going to be a myth. It's always going to be a story that you tell yourselves, right, about what you want to value. It's aspirational, right? And so I think it's fair probably to say that people in Silicon Valley would like to believe that they are analytical, that they are very, very intelligent, that money perhaps doesn't matter, that your Ivy League education perhaps doesn't matter. That gets a little thin, right? But I think it's more a desire to want to believe that. I don't think anybody thinks that that's actually the case.
But this is a business that is replete with kind of young guys who've spent tons of time in front of computer screens coding, and I mean, I presume that hours and hours in front of screens does something. If your culture is made up of a bunch of people who are all like that, that's a particular culture, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there are shifting currents in the culture in Silicon Valley right now, right? Like when I got out there, and I would say even before I got out there, so maybe 2000 or something, right? I think that was more true then, right? And I think that we all know what tech culture and sort of geek culture looks like, right? And it's super analytical, it's super blunt, right? It's very high IQ, not so high EQ, right? Lots of social awkwardness, all that kind of thing, right? So we know what that looks like.
High intelligence quotient, very low emotional quotient.
Yeah, and it's not fair to say you can't really stereotype, but generally speaking, what you said is true, right? If you spend all your time in front of the computer and you're deep, like speaking machine language to a machine, right? You
don't know how to talk to women.
Yeah, and Jimmy Wales used to say about Wikipedia all the time, like the people who write Wikipedia are the people who are at home on Friday night writing an encyclopedia, as opposed to at a party, right? So draw your own conclusions, right? So I think that that's true. There's an aspect of geek culture that is very real in Silicon Valley. Though I would temper that by saying that more recently, in the past 10 years and especially the past 5 years, it has become the new Wall Street, right? And so there's a big influx of quants and people who are interested in. They're financially motivated. They're there for the money. There's lots of money being made there, right?
Sue,
and that's also a different culture, right?
Well, because the chief executive of Uber apparently told GQ magazine he calls his company not Uber but Boober because his wealth makes him attractive to women. And then the CEO of Snapchat 5 years ago in college sent emails to his frat brothers calling female students bitches and frigid and sorora sluts. So is this the tone that is being set at the top of some of these new and very rich companies?
It's super interesting because both those guys I think are in their 20s. The guy who runs Uber might be in his 30s by now. Snapchat guy is I think 25 or 26 now, right? And he has said that he is mortified by those emails and the fact that they became public, right? And so to a certain extent you want to say we were all 23. I wasn't sending emails like that when I was 23, but I was 23. I think that when you have an ecosystem with a bunch of different players, right? So there's sort of pre-boom companies, pre-bust companies, that are established and older, and they have much more predictable, careful, safe corporate cultures. But for sure, you've got companies run by brash young guys who are saying the things that some brash young guys say, right? Which are not ordinarily said by CEOs of companies, right? And I think that what is striking to me about Silicon Valley is that what you would ordinarily expect to happen is ordinarily you would expect you would also have counter messages, right? You would also have people who are a bit older, a bit more seasoned, a bit more experienced, maybe in oversight positions, board members.
Do we not have those people?
We have those people, and there is not a lot of pushback on that kind of message, which I do find surprising.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.